All right, this is a special meeting of the Springfield City Council. We are here on a hearing to determine the tax levy. Councilor Allen. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thanks, everybody, for coming to this special meeting. This is an annual process that we have of determining a tax rate that we recommend to recommend to this board to vote on. I'd like to just tell you a little bit about what we did in the last couple of weeks, and then I'll give you the recommendation, and we will. Will we have an opportunity for people to speak tonight? Yes, thank you. So I'd like to introduce you. The way this is set up is every year there's a small committee put together of a few individuals. It generally is the chairman of the finance committee of the city council. That's myself. It is also the president of the Springfield Regional Chamber, which is Nancy Creed. You can see Nancy. She's in the second row there. It is an economist or a financial analyst from locally. We have Mark Howard, who's Perfect Economics, in the last row. The chairman of the Board of Assessors, which is Richard Allen, standing in the back. And a citizen, Wilfredo Lopez, sitting in the front here. The five of us are the committee this year. Our job is to talk about this stuff, different financial requirements of the city, et cetera, tax rates, and all related issues to that. We have done that over the last 2 weeks. We met, this is our fifth meeting. We've had 4 meetings as a committee. One was 2 weeks ago. 2 were last week, Tuesday and Thursday, and one was earlier this afternoon. In terms of public participation, because last week at our council meeting, Councilor Bud Williams, suggested we have another meeting on Thursday night, or if we could fit in another meeting. We did that on Thursday night, this past, and the total number of members of the public who attended the 3 different hearings is around 10 or 11 people. Somebody came to a couple of them. We had 2 the first time, then we had 3 or 4 on Thursday night, and we had 5 this afternoon. So 10 or 11 people in total, depending on how you're counting. What we do now is pick up the revenue portion of our budget. The way this works is in June we approve the city budget, the expenses of what we're going to spend in the city, what was approved from July 1st of 2017 to June 30th of 2018. But it's not funded when we vote on it. The way it works is if you are a homeowner, you saw you got estimated tax bills in August and November of this year, and that's based on last year's tax rate. And at this point in the year, we actually make a recommended tax rate, and your bills going forward, the February and May bills will have your accurate tax information on them. So at this point in time, we don't have the opportunity to cut the budget. The time to cut the budget is in May and June. Whatever the budget, so if you're someone who says, why do we have to do this now? Why do we have to raise this money? Because we've already approved the budget. And the difference for us to come up with this year was $6.9 million. In other words, the levy that we can, the number that we can use, that we can assess in the city is 198 million roughly, and was about 191 million last year. $6.9 million difference. So at this point, our job is just to figure out how to raise the money and what rate we need to put in place on residents and on commercial properties. So you hopefully have all received this multicolor striped sheet here in front of you. And what is represented on the sheet is the red stripe is the mayor's recommendation. And, you know, Richard Allen can walk us through the different important facts on that. But just so you know, and the lower yellow stripe, you know, it says fiscal year 17 rate. That was what we voted last year. The mayor's recommendation was the red stripe. As it turns out, we did vote for the mayor's recommendation. which is an increase of 3 cents on residents and I believe 18 cents on commercial. And if you want to remember, if you can just dial back to last year we had the same residential rate as we did the year before. We held the line on residential, did not increase the rate at all. Many people saw an increased tax bill, but it was because their values went up. It wasn't because the rate went up. This year, the recommendation, which comes to this board, and we can do whatever we want with it, is what the mayor recommended. Of last year's residential rate was $19.66 per thousand, and the recommendation here tonight is $19.69 per thousand. There's some interesting facts that go behind all this. That is, the average single-family home in Springfield is now back up. Our highest value we ever had for an average single-family home price was $151,000. We aren't quite back to that. As things slipped, we went down to $126,000, and now we're back in the $147,000 range. So we're not quite back to where single-family prices were when they were at their highest, but we're close. Last year was $142,000. This year, $147,000. So the recommendation that we bring to you tonight from our committee is the red line, if you will, there, $19.69 for a residential rate, and I'm not sure, $39. I can't read this thing. Could you come up and help us, Mr. Allen, please? $39.
The mayor's recommended residential factor.
So I'm going to sit down now. That's the logistic. That's how we got here tonight. We had good participation. The committee was great. It's the same committee as last year. So we've done it now 2 years in a row. We kind of know each other and we know the process. And I'm going to sit down and have Richard Allen take any questions on the finances that you might have.
If I might just offer a few comments. So this was a certification year for the city of Springfield, meaning that the State Department of Revenue puts assessors through a rigorous process. Used to be every 3 years, now it's every 5 years. So this was we were actually one of the first communities on the 5-year cycle. This year we were due for the 3-year, but with the change, some communities that were up moved to a 4th or 5th year. We took our medicine this year, and I'm proud to say that we finished on time. It's been a challenging process. We've met all statistical requirements of the State Department of Revenue. We've worked closely with them for several weeks, and I think I want to publicly acknowledge Patrick Greenhall and Matt Fontaine from the board, who have worked strenuously with me to get all the components of this process done, and it's really a team effort. So we've received preliminary certification Friday and final certification today. And then our new growth was approved today as well. So we have all the official approvals that are required for the council to go forward and vote tax rates tonight. Just a few other highlights. The improvement in residential values continues. As Councilor Allen pointed out, we're nearly back to the historic high of the average single-family value in Springfield. That was in fiscal 2008. It was $151,500. We're the closest we've ever been since to that. As the current trend of appreciation continues, we may well surpass that next year, fiscal 19. The levy increased this year about $6.9 million. Last year was 9.5. So there was, we were able to capture all of our new growth last year. This year we hit the levy ceiling at a level that meant that we were not able to capture all of the new growth. So there's about $2.9 million of new growth that we're unable to access because of the levy ceiling. There are good signs, however, on the local economy. Certainly, the Chinese railway facility in East Springfield, that wasn't 100% complete at our valuation date, but it was 80% complete, so that is part of this levy. We have 58 new single-family homes in Springfield that are being assessed for the first time, a dozen new two-family homes. So that's all good evidence of a strong residential market and an improving commercial market. That said, certainly challenges remain in the commercial sector. We all are familiar with Boston Road and some of the vacancy there downtown, a lot of available space downtown. Commercial industrial overall, certainly has not grown at the rate that residential has, but there are, some indications that will improve in years to come. And just finally, the tax rate proposal on the multicolored chart in front of you, the red line, the only red line on the table is the mayor's proposal for 1969 and 3925. And what that does, it preserves the gap between the residential share of the value and the residential share of the levy, and consequently, it preserves the gap between the commercial, industrial, personal share of the value and the share of the levy, as last year. So it was 15.48. That metric has always been a part of this discussion, and the mayor's proposal, I think, balances the concerns of all sectors and in preserving the gap. It's not an ideal solution for either sector, but I think it's an appropriate balance. We've also provided you several sheets showing the impact on single-family homes across the city, and two families and three families, as well as commercial. Those are on separate sheets in the sets of material that was distributed this evening. Happy to answer any questions on that. That will conclude my comments for now. Happy to take any questions.
Councilor Williams. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you really for Tim, to your committee for putting the due diligence in. And to you, I've said this every year, when values are going up, that's a good sign for the city. You didn't mention MGM. Was there any reason why? Are they factored in our tax rate yet?
Great question, Councilor. MGM is not in the levy this year. This is their first being outside the levy. They are a Chapter 121A project, and that's a 40-year contract between the city and MGM, and essentially, it's not a discount. What it does is it establishes the expectations for the city as to what we will receive for annual revenue over the 40 years, and allows them to plan their finances and get their funding for knowing what their budget is for taxes over. So it's an average of between 24 and 25 million over the 40 years.
Well, aren't they paying 18, 19 this last cycle? What did they pay last cycle, the 121A?
I'm sorry.
18 million for the last cycle?
In terms of value or taxes?
What they paid in lieu of the 121A, in lieu of taxes for the 121A.
They will be paying related to the 121A going forward when they open commercially. This year, their 121A payment will be $4 million.
And what's going to be the average?
The average over the 40 years, between 24 and 25 million.
Then every 4 years, it's recalibrated again?
No, actually, they're on a different contract.
Right.
It essentially grows over time. And they're not part of the property tax base or part of that calculation.
And the reason why you did that, because typically if you tax them and they're not happy, they take you to court and said, you overvalued us.
We could be fighting them every couple of years at the appellate tax board.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a common problem for a local government around the country. As casinos have grown, the market has become over surplus in some areas, and Atlantic City being the best case. And as those values that the local government in Atlantic City was relying on, they've had major problems and needed a state rescue, and it's really related to the tax abatements for the casinos.
Just if you know, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, part of that payment, are the residents ever going to see any relief in taxes when we get that payment from MGM, which was part of our discussion a few years ago?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that's a discussion at the budgetary level. My responsibility is to make sure we have good values on all the taxable property and that we receive all the revenues the cities do on the 121A.
Just as I asked every year, can you explain, go down to some of the neighborhoods in terms of taxes, like East Forest Park's going to be somewhere, Mason Square's going to be somewhere, the North End's going to be someplace else, Forest Park's going to be someplace else.
Right, so we have a sheet, I think you all should have one, called single-family homes at tax rate of 1969, so, and it breaks it down by neighborhood. 16 acres is the first on the list, East Forest Park is second. So this is organized by the neighborhoods that have the highest number of single-family homes. And as you can see, by the total at the bottom, 26,157, the total single-family homes increasing would be 1,719. You can see where those increases occur in those $50 increments. Single-family home market has been very strong for the last several years.
Give me the average payment in East Forest Park.
The average payment?
Payment in East Forest Park. Numbers are great, but I'm from the old school. I like to see dollars and cents. It's easier for me to calculate in this brain of mine.
We split East Forest Park into several different districts.
Oh, I know.
But generally, you're going to be a value of in excess of 150 or the high 200s. I'm just turning on my calculator. So say a house was valued at $160 last year, $3,145, say last year. Say it this year, maybe it's up to $175, we'll say, 1969, $3,445.
Because that's what
So about
happened.
$300, I mean, just in that.
The headline today was taxes are going to go up $108 average. And we know in some communities are going to be probably $300 or $400 or
Right.
$500.
Right.
That's the only point I'm trying to make, is that it's very difficult. People see 108 and they get that tax bill, which is,
Right.
in some neighborhoods, is going to be a lot more than $108 per year.
Right. Yeah, that average is really a statistic, and it can be misleading. It's trying to show you the central tendency, but essentially, if you look at East Forest Park on your sheet, if you go over about to the middle of the page, increase 251 or above, there's 675 homes in that category alone. Certainly there's a lot of houses out there that are valued a lot higher than they were 4 or 5 years ago. And when the rate is relatively stable, as it's been, the value is going to rise, and the tax bill is going to rise in proportion to that.
So I want to just dispel the notion that the 108 was the average up in East Forest Park and parts of 16 acres and parts of Hungry Hill and parts of Forest Park. There'll be a lot more.
Point well taken.
A couple of points. First off, I like the proposal that has been made on the tax rate, in that we're not going backwards on the business community. I wish there was a way to maybe close the gap a little closer, but at least we're not going back. But I guess my question to you is not so much for this year, but I look at the table that we have for the 2 families and the 3 families. And a lot of these properties are not owner-occupied. And those owners clearly, on the federal level, take those properties as a business expense. Is there any way going forward that a non-owner occupied property, 2 or 3 family or however, that we would be allowed to classify that as a business. That, if we could do that, that would remove a lot of properties off the personal residence, which would allow us to give the owner-occupied person a bigger break. Is there any way to do that? Now, this is not
Talk
for
to
this
your
year.
talk to your colleague, Councilor Bud L. Williams. It's a legislative decision. What is deemed residential and what is deemed commercial? It's strictly a vote of the legislature.
So there's not a bar because some things we try to do with non-owner occupied homes, we run into constitutional issues and other issues, but this is purely a legislative issue that if we could get legislation of that nature, we could greatly benefit the single family or even an owner occupied home and really take the person that has got a not owner occupied that's causing us problems in the city, driving our expenses up, and tax them at a different level. So that would be feasible from the standpoint it would just require legislation.
Right. The legislature determines what's residential and what's commercial. There was a dispute a few years ago, and it resulted in a change regarding bed and breakfast properties.
Right.
And if it's 3 units, 3 bedrooms or less, then it's deemed residential. If it's more than that, it's deemed commercial.
But if the owner himself, and I don't want to drag this out, but if the owner of that property is being treated as a business on a federal tax level and even on a state tax return level, I would think we as a local community ought to get a benefit of that and be able to tax that as a business the way it's being treated. So you're saying that's something we could look to the state legislature to try to solve?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I was just wondering which Alan I should address the question to, but is this the only recommendation that you considered?
Nancy Creed we didn't have a motion. This is the only motion we had. We did consider 2.2 cents higher on residential. So instead of a 3-cent increase on residential, a 5-cent increase on residential, which made the commercial come down a little bit more. And the reason one of the other things is commercial values are going up, residential values are going up. So that's a kind of another factor, as we just talked about, residential values are going up. So we looked at the number of properties that were, even though in this proposal, the commercial value properties are paying more, 18 cents more, 35% of them will see a tax decrease, I believe, because their values have come down. So, so we talked about that. And to answer your question directly, we talked about that. The motion was that we brought forth to this council was as a result of a motion by Wilfredo Lopez, and it passed 4-1.
What kind of, you didn't have very many constituents in this area. Can you do any citizen input to your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, the citizen input that these were the specific people that came to the tax hearings. I was in another meeting last week where it wasn't a tax hearing, but it was a sector meeting, and I got some feedback there. I think people are just concerned about people who are on flat, level incomes and can't afford any increase. These are tough decisions. It's a hard thing to figure out how to be sensitive to the business community that's employing people and also sensitive to people in that situation. So what we did last year was keep the rate the same. So any increase people saw in 17 over 16 was due to values. This year, the values, again, with that 108 number, the $108 and change difference on the average, the increase on the average tax bill for the on the tax bill for the average single-family home, $104 of that is due to values. The rate that we are bringing forth to the council tonight only adds $4 to that. So again, you're in a situation where the values in the city are going up, and that's what's driving mainly the increase. So And did I answer your question?
Yes, it does, but I have another question that I didn't before. I have to agree with my colleague, Buddy Williams, I'd kind of like to see all these strong, the numbers and all like that. With this proposal tonight, will every homeowner see an increase?
No, there will be some single-family, 2- and 3-family homeowners who will have a decrease, and that's noted on the sheets that we distributed.
Very small figures on those sheets.
No, on the other sheets that show the impact.
I believe out of 26,000 single families, about 21,000 see an increase, 5,000 do not.
Yeah.
If I'm,
Yeah, about 4,400 single families will see a decrease, about 1,700 two-families, and about 169 three-families.
Counselor, if you can use your microphone so that people don't.
What is the difference in the gap this year for commercial and residential? Is it weighed more towards the commercial or the residential?
The difference in the gap?
Yeah.
So the gap is 15.48. So it's really the same whether you're looking at it as residential or commercial. The gap, when the gap's constant, and if residential is rising at a greater proportion than commercial, industrial, and personal in the aggregate, then if the gap's constant, then the residential is going to bear a little bit more of the levy. Their share of the levy will in relation to that gap, will rise.
This seems to be a smoother process than in past years. Would you say that?
I've been at it 30 years. I think I'm learning.
There's still more to learn?
Yeah.
So I really just want to know, in simple terms, and I don't know if you can do it, but I asked about East Forest Park. We're all concerned about different areas of the city, so a tax bill going out to, say, Forest Park would see how much of an increase to the homeowner. Can you tell me that?
Forest Park single families?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no uniform increase. It's really a product of the increase to the value of the property. So in
So the
Forest...
good news is the value goes up, but the other side of it is that the taxes are also impacted.
Right. So if 26, let me see, Forest Park, single families, 3,030, 2,608 will see an increase. Of that number, the 2,608, 295 of those will go up at least $251 if you read across. So looks like the largest single group is between $51 and $100. But, as we're reflecting selling prices in the neighborhood, and as neighborhoods experience appreciation and the market provides that data to us, we're simply reflecting that in the assessed values.
And how many requests for abatements do you usually get after all this? Or does it vary?
It used to be between 1,000 and 2,000. We've been under 800 for the last several years. And of that 800, that's 800 overall, commercial, industrial, residential, and personal. And I don't know, we're around 300 or so single families typically, which is, just a little bit more than 1%. So I guess we're right 99% of the time.
Well, it's important. It impacts everybody in the city.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. Before we get to more questions, I'd like to give the public an opportunity to speak. And so at this time, if there's anyone from the public who would like to step forward and address the council, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Wilfredo Lopez, 111 Wollaston Street in Springfield. I served on the tax committee this year and last year. we made a recommendation to go with the mayor's recommendation, because in order for the average, I'm just going to go off of average, which I'm basing it on 147,000, which is the median price of homes. In order for it to go down so that they don't see any increase, we'd be at like $18.91, which is not even anywhere near the sheet, so we'd have to keep going. And as we keep going down, the commercial keeps going up. So every time we take from the residential, we have to make up with it by commercial. So the rate is not really what influences the increase. It's the value. Based on the value at 1966 is what we currently have, going with the mayor's recommendation of 1969, it only goes up under $5 per household. The commercial, let's say on a $300,000 property, it goes up $57. So if you had a $300,000 property, based on the rate, then you'd be going up $9. So the rate impacts your taxes by $9 if you have a $300,000 home. So I mean, hopefully that gives some perspective on it. But in order, I think the message that they were trying to send was trying to close the gap a little bit between commercial and residential. When it comes to MGM, the 24 million, it doesn't come into account. And I think that is the biggest piece that we heard from the residents is how do we get a tax break based on the 24 million average? You don't. It goes to a whole separate, it goes to the general fund to take care of, to fund the budget as well. But the thing is, the levy, in order to actually see a drop in any way, it's all based on the levy and based on the budget, the city's budget. So if the city's budget doesn't go down, then you're never going to see a decrease in taxes, because it's going to be based on value, and we're going to have a bill to pay, and to get to that value, we have to push the levy. So that's all I got, really. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Nancy Creed, I'm the president of the Springfield Regional Chamber. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before you. I'm speaking on behalf of the nearly 400 members of our chamber that operate a business in the city of Springfield. Again, I want to thank you for your willingness to hear the voice of business over the years. I know we've had our differences, but I do appreciate the time you've taken. The chamber recognizes the difficult task you have ahead of you in setting the tax rate. No one wants to raise taxes. I certainly am feeling very unpopular in this position, and I'm sure it's an unpopular position for you as well. But the chamber believes that we all must work together to make the city successful. The reality is that the business community only makes up 27.5% of the property values, but pays nearly 43% of all taxes. That means that businesses are paying 15.48% more in property taxes. So not only do they pay more than 15% more in property taxes, they use less municipal services. On average, for every $1 in property taxes paid by a resident, a city has to supply $1.19 of services. Whereas for every $1 in property taxes for a business, only 29 cents, are spent on services. Add to the fact that the commercial and industrial properties, their values are stagnant and in some cases depreciating, whereas the property taxes of the residential community have risen. So businesses pay upwards of 15% more of the property taxes, they use less municipal services, and they have stagnant property values. Shifting more of the tax burden onto the business community would not only be a discouraging signal to potential investors, but would have significant ramifications on existing businesses. If you don't mind, I have a few examples. 80% of our members are small businesses operating on small profit margins, unable to absorb or pass on additional costs. Take one of our local sign companies. Under the rate recommended by the committee, they will see a tax bill of more than $11,000, even though their property lost over $40,000 in value. One of our small manufacturers with 35 employees will see a 10% increase in their taxes. They think they can absorb about 2% of that. Anything higher would result in a loss of business and potentially a loss of jobs. One of our local machine shops, they will face a tax bill of nearly $50,000, even though their same property value decreased by that very amount. and one of our larger manufacturers will see a tax bill of more than $103,000. And even though they're hiring, that staggering amount could put those plans on hold. If you combine these local rising costs with higher energy prices, a statewide paid leave program that could cost businesses over $1 billion, and upwards pressures of rising minimum wage, our business community is at a tipping point where it can no longer compete with neighboring communities and states. As I mentioned earlier, I understand that raising taxes on homeowners is not popular, but I think the alternative of discouraging businesses from relocating to here, discouraging them from expanding and from growing jobs, and encouraging job loss as opposed to encouraging job creation would be much more unpopular. While I applaud the committee and the mayor in understanding this issue and recommending that there be a freeze in what we call the gap, that 15.48 I mentioned earlier, it would be our position that the gap be slightly reduced to 15.42. Reducing that gap would equate to just $3 more this year for an average homeowner in the city than the recommendations currently before you. And while in the case of the examples I provided, the savings to the business community are also small, $20 here, $200 there, but it is more the message you send than the savings. The message you send would be strong, that Springfield recognizes the value of the business community, the role it plays in growing jobs, growing paychecks, and growing our economy. The message you send is that Springfield is open for business. So I hope that when you're deliberating your rate recommendation, you can see your way to support this small reduction in the business tax burden. Or if you can't, I hope you at least can support the committee's recommendation and the mayor's recommendation and not shift further burden onto the city, onto the business community. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else who would like to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Felix. I own a home here in Springfield. I'm here, I appreciate everything you said, it makes sense. And I'd just like to say, like you said, we don't have any control over the value of our home. It went up. But what I would like to say is people have been asking about how specifically it affects a person, an individual that owns a home. Me in particular, last year we had no tax rate increase. Our values went up. So my bill went up by $400 last year alone. So now we're looking again at another increase, not only in the value, but we're increasing the tax rate. So my bill, once again, I have a 3% increase in my value of the home. So I'm looking at an additional increase on my taxes. Now, I'm a municipal employee, and I think we know that we don't get a lot of raises. If I get a 1.5% raise a year, that's a lot. So I also noted that the city's budget went up by 2% across the board. So, you know, we have the line items in there. I understand that. I heard him say about the $25 million for the MGM funding. Now, that's an annual figure, I think. Is that right? The annual figure. Out of that, 18.6 million, I believe, or 18.1 is in lieu of taxes. So we're not going to receive that in for the tax line item, but we are receiving that money. So it is in the budget. Where it's at, I don't know. It's in there. It's paying for something. Like I said, our budget increased by 2% across the board from last year's budget. Our values are increasing by 3%. We have to find a way to get the money from somewhere else, not the residents. I have parents who are seniors. They own a home. They are on a fixed income. They've been in their home for over 30 years. They don't have an increase. So where are they going to go? Are they going to have to move, sell their house? The bank might take the house if they can't afford to stay there. My increase was $400 last year, might be another $400 this year. I can cover it, can they? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jacqueline Prince. I live at 35 Arthur Street, and I'm basically saying the same as this lady over here. This year, my property is assessed value is proposed to go up $2,800, and the house right next door to me was condemned by the city this year, about 4 months ago. So I don't see how my property is going to be worth more when that house is condemned. It's ruining the value of my property. And also on the assessed value on the website, they increased the value of the condemned house $6,200. Now, does that make any sense? I don't see where, this is fair. To me, the condemned house has brought my property value down, but yet the assessed value was going up $2,800. And last year, it went up $8,000. So I just don't see where this is fair to me, and I don't know if there's anything I can do about it, but being in, the city, I know you can't go over to every house, but you must have a list somewhere that says which houses are condemned so you can assess the value properly. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Say again, if there's anyone else who would like to speak, please step forward. See none. Any discussion? Councilor Hurst.
I'm sorry. I'm Sandra Vella, and I've lived in my house for 71 years. It's the house my grandfather built. I'm a retired city employee. I've used my money to help take care of my family, my brother, my mother, and now I'm trying to take care of the house. I'm pretty much out of money now. It's $10,000 for a roof, $9,000 for a driveway, $3,000 for a foundation, all in the same year. What's happened is we've got a condemned house around the corner, 3 single-family houses behind me that are now Section 8 housing. They were scooped up because the people were foreclosed upon, and the people in there weren't screened, and we're calling the police all the time. I've got a woman next door who now has her 2 grandchildren with special needs under the age of 5, a daughter on drugs, and she's afraid she's going to lose her house because she's got to get services for these kids and can't get the records. So we've got problems in the city. I'm concerned about the seniors who have little money, a set income, want to maintain their houses, trying to maintain the outside and the value of their houses, and then you've got a condemned house over here. I've got a vacant house next door to me that's falling apart, a condemned one around the corner. This is Forest Park. This is the section by the East Long Meadow line. We have a multicultural neighborhood with people that are wonderful. I mean, I had to be away this weekend to take care of a sick family, and when I got back, they shoveled my sidewalk. They brought my trash barrels in. They cleaned it up for me. They even did the staircase to go to the backyard so they could bring the barrels downstairs. This is the neighborhood I live in. They're wonderful people, but they're barely holding on. I've got a lot of young moms with children and husbands that walked away, and they're just struggling to keep their houses nice. I'm afraid that if the taxes get too high, they're going to lose their homes, and then what is going to happen to those kids and grandkids? I'm afraid about the seniors who can't maintain the outside anymore because of the taxes, and what's happened is the co-payments on the medication has gone sky high. I have 2 meds for my eyes. It's $150 each copay a month. This takes a big bite out of your income when it's only $4,000 I'm running everything on. And that's including the loan from the car. This is what's happening, and I'm just the average citizen who worked hard. And I believe the same thing is true of other people in the city. And I'm just concerned that if they vacate, you're going to have a lot of empty homes to deal with. And if we go too high in the businesses, we're going to have the same problem. They're going to leave, and we need the income. And yes, I realize we need the income to run the city. My uncle was a city councilor, Vinnie DeMonico, and I was drummed in with everything that was going on. I realize that you need the money, but I would please ask you to think wisely in what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Councilor Hurst.
Thank you. Quickly, Richie, I think people have raised some very valid points. Can you just talk a little bit about how your staff goes about assessing these properties? I mean, are you going street by street? Are these just isolated incidences that homeowners are referring to? And then the second question is it possible for us to be able to do something for our seniors who are on it, or those who might be on a fixed income? And might we be able to look into the MGM, some of the funding that MGM is giving us with respect to taxes, and maybe offset some of the costs for our seniors? Is that something that you've talked with the mayor about?
Okay, thank you, Councilor. In terms of the evaluation process, so we have 3 field staff who are in the field every day checking on properties. We've got 33,000 plus homes in the city, and under state regulations, we're expected to attempt to get entry into each of those homes at least once every 10 years to verify that our physical data is accurate. And point of fact, we're getting into some of them several times because they're selling, or there's permits, or there's abatement activity. So that's 5 days a week. Those 3 individuals are visiting properties, making sure that we have accurate information. A lot of times, they're not able to get cooperation from property owners, and in terms of gaining entry into the property. But we do the best we can and try to keep our records as accurate as possible. So that's the physical data collection. In terms of the market itself and knowing the sales activity, we get a copy of every deed that's filed at the Registry of Deeds. There's between 3,000 and 4,000 deeds annually. We screen them, and we're attempting to determine which transactions actually meet the criteria of a market sale. So if it's a sale from a Smith to a Smith, or if it's a court order, or if it's a bank-owned property that's being unloaded, a lot of different reasons to disqualify a home transaction from being deemed a market sale. In the end, there's really 3 or 4 layers of screening and testing of each sale. We have a residential appraiser who works with us, and he's got 30 years experience. He knows the city better than anybody I know. And so we are making great strides in defining the market sales. We used about 808 single-family homes that sold in calendar 2016 as the market sales. Now those are distributed across about 45 different assessing districts. And within each district, the subjects, each home, has a value that's estimated through our system that typically relies on at least 4 comparable sales and often 5. We're using the physical data captured in the field, and we're using the market data that's been examined and verified through our process. Same process for 2 and 3 family homes, certainly a couple of the speakers raised some concerns about nearby properties, and that's something we try to be vigilant about, and we will, gladly pay attention to those specific instances. So that's the valuation process, kind of in short. The next question was MGM. And the MGM question about tax relief or using some of the MGM revenue, that's really a conversation with the budgetary officials and the mayor. I try to raise the money. I'm not in those discussions about how to spend the money. But I think that's a fair question. We've heard that in different meetings of our tax rate committee. There's a high awareness of that. Was there a third question? Oh, I'm sorry, the seniors. So there are certain options for tax relief for the seniors that are set by state statute. We have about between 1,200 and 1,300 households in Springfield that receive some form of statutory relief. Some of them are veterans, but most of them are seniors or widows or widowers of any age, and there are certain financial criteria that thresholds under which they must fall in order to qualify for relief. Again, it was over 1,200 households in fiscal 17. We expect, the vast majority of those to continue to qualify, and every year we get a new batch of people who are filing for the first time. So people who reach the age of 70 or what have you. And those forms of relief are determined on the basis of assets as well as income. And the lower form of relief is $175 off of the tax bill. The other is $500. Another way that seniors can qualify for tax relief is through their state personal income tax. This has been a problem across the Commonwealth for the last couple of decades, and the state legislature responded to it by creating the state income tax circuit breaker, senior citizen circuit breaker relief. And essentially, people who are house rich but income poor, if they qualify under certain gross income and as well as assessed value, if they're paying more than 10% of their gross income in their property taxes, then that amount trips the circuit, breaks the circuit, and they can receive relief through the state personal income tax. They have to file in order to do that. A lot of our seniors don't file because they don't reach that level, but if they want to get that relief, they need to file. We called the Department of Revenue last week to ask this question. Again, it's over 1,200 households in that received it in the most recent year for which they gave us information. And the typical circuit breaker amount of savings was about $749. So we try to encourage our senior citizen homeowners to pursue that circuit breaker.
Richie, the date to file for seniors to file for an abatement is fast approaching. Would you like to share, if you know the date, can you share that with us?
Yeah, that would be April 1st for all the statutory filers seeking relief on the basis of their circumstances, whether they're veterans, seniors, widows, widowers. That's that form of relief. The form of relief where you want to challenge your taxes, your value, that's February 1st.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Williams.
Yeah, just real quick. Just in terms of nonprofits, Richie, and I know we haven't gone down this road for a number of years, but there are some nonprofits who, in lieu of taxes, should be a payment. I know in Boston, DC, Northeastern, and Harvard, they all pay something in lieu of taxes, which helps alleviate taxes from the residents, the housing authorities. What do we do when a nonprofit over a certain threshold makes a purchase, takes property off the tax rolls, and then they just operate without paying any taxes?
We try to engage them in a conversation about, making some form of payment in lieu of taxes. We've had extremely limited success over the years. Yeah.
I know that we had talked several years ago about that because it really irks me, because I remember Mark Talowski was president of then Bay State. He used to pay $50,000 in lieu of taxes every year, hoping that other nonprofits who couldn't really afford it, and you don't mess with the churches and the synagogues below that threshold. But I think the city, as other cities are thinking about and looking for revenues to help offset taxes, because we can't continue to carry folks who take good pieces of property, make money, take them off tax. They have to be a payment in lieu of taxes. I think this council needs to start. We had started talking about it, I just never pursued it because you couldn't get any traction. But it has to happen, because whether it's the housing authority who uses policemen and fire and your tax dollars, they use your roads and all that stuff. So at some point in time, above that threshold, these schools were making money and nonprofits. There has to be a conversation. They have to pay their fair share to help alleviate the burden, because what's going to continue, this picture isn't going to get any better between the values and the taxes and people, you know, with Trump and Washington, you know, what's going to happen with taxes. But this is very serious, as the testimony has said, that the average person, their income isn't going up. Their value goes up, taxes go up. Now you got a tax bill of $700, $800. And where's that money going to come from? They usually find to struggle with it. I don't know if that's on you, on the mayor, or TJ, or what happened, but someone needs to pay in lieu of tax nonprofits.
Yeah, we've had limited success with Bay State, but more with them than, frankly, with any other institution.
Well, Mark Talowski simply told me, counsel, I will pay my fair share. And he paid his fair share when no one else would pay. So he
That's
said,
right.
if no one else is going to pay, I'm not going to pay. I don't know how they do it in Boston and Worcester and all the other municipalities, but they find a way to convince the nonprofits that in lieu of taxes, it's very helpful to make the city a much better place, that we all participate in it and we all share in the burden of paying for services. So
The city of Lowell, UMass Lowell purchased some taxable property downtown, and there was a lot of controversy over it, and ultimately UMass and the city of Lowell agreed on a payment of low tax within the last year.
I mean, I think it's going to be a way we're going to have to do business from here going forward. Thanks, Assessor.
Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just have a follow-up question on our residents' concerns about with that ever increase the property value of neighboring homes, or I'm sorry, property itself, whatever. I guess is there anything where that causes deteriorating properties or the blighted properties to see?
Well, yeah, so, you know, we're visiting properties, we're driving up and down the streets, and, you know, sometimes we have a physical status date of June 30th. Sometimes something happens after June 30th. We haven't been there. You know, it's often a timing issue. You know, we have 3 people to cover, you know, 33,000 properties. But we rate each property in the city on its physical condition and on its market appeal. And, you know, certainly my curiosity was piqued by the comments over here, so we'll pay attention to that.
Do you feel that you're overstaffed in terms of your field operations? Do you feel that you're overstaffed?
I think we're adequately staffed.
Just thinking, 33,000 homes, and, you know, like you said, that you get to one house every 10 years, and per staff, that's 11,000 homes in the course of 10 years. I don't, that staffing might change per person, but it just seems that in terms of that due diligence, which I think is really important, because I've heard on several occasions of property values increasing, but they have, you know, they're surrounded by blighted properties or more blighted properties around them than in the past. So also just a follow up to, you had mentioned that in FY 2008, that's the point where we peaked at the average for the, was it 151?
151.5.
151.5. You said by FY 19, we might get there again.
Right.
So, help me understand that, because that's the case. I mean, I don't really necessarily see a tax rate being imposed on residents. The more, I guess, properties that get on the tax roll, I mean, is that having any meaning in terms of residents paying more taxes per year? Does that affect that?
Right, well, I think if you're looking for homeowners to have lower bills or, some relief going forward, the way for that to happen essentially is to get more commercial industrial value onto the tax base.
Do you see, any improvements over the next, 5 to 10 years with some of the economic development?
Oh, I'm optimistic that we're going to see improved value climate in the South End, certainly. Mm-hmm. We've seen numerous transactions on Columbus Ave and in areas within the perimeter of the casino. I think it'll take some time to let the process take hold for the rest of downtown. Tower Square's on the market, there's a lot of vacancy in Class B and Class C property. There's a lot of vacancy on Boston Road. So I think, we're in a transition. I think we're really kind of a laboratory for what happens when you site a casino downtown. But the early indications are that that's having a very strong impact within a very, small, short vicinity of the casino site. Yeah.
And just one last point, just jumping over to the talk about abatements. I've spoken to several constituents that live in the acres, particularly, many of whom are, of course, elderly. And I was just doing some simple math, and out of the 5, 7, 13 of the houses the parcels that we can count minus the deductions, because there's really 6796, but of course 1083 of those are deductions, which are always good. Just in terms of that number, 2484, those individuals will be paying or see an increase of $101, which is almost half comparatively. I'm just wondering, just in terms of abatements for seniors, because a lot of that number, I can imagine, are elderly individuals. Can you describe the fee structure a little bit? I'm just trying to, I know there's a $50 abatement fee, if I'm not mistaken, in some cases, or can you describe?
So, again, there's the $175 option, and then there's the $500 option for people over the age of 70. The $175 is available to people of any age if they're a widow or a widower.
Right.
But both of them require qualifying on a financial basis. The $175, it's under $40,000. Your assets must be under 40. Okay? Mm-hmm. The $500, it's income and assets, and it's different levels depending upon if it's a single person or a married couple or in the household. If there's other family members on the ownership, we need to see their information as well. So there are those two options through the assessor's office. Then there's, I suspect a lot of those circuit breaker recipients in Springfield are out in 16 acres, frankly. $749 average relief on your personal income tax, and over 1,200 households. That's a very progressive, constructive way of mitigating the cost to a household, what the tax burden is. And they want to stay there, they want to stay in their home,
right.
And that's the way to do it.
Well, I would just encourage this council to consider any alternative measures in terms of trying to lessen the load for even that abatement fee, which, if you're having difficulty paying your property taxes per year, that fee in itself is, I think, almost ridiculous. So if we can, I don't know, TJ, if there's a way to...
Now, you say the abatement fee, what?
Yes, you said the 175...
That's relief.
Relief, right.
Okay.
But isn't there an application fee as well?
Absolutely not.
There's not?
No application fee. If they don't like the original decision of the assessors, we get 3 months from the date of application to decide. If they don't like it and they want to appeal it, then they appeal it through the state agency. There's an application fee there.
For that, okay.
Yeah, but there is no fee whatsoever to file locally.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. All right, thank you.
Councilors, just a quick time check. The time is now 7:13. We're 13 minutes overtime. We have a hearings meeting scheduled right after this, and so just wanted to make a point of the time. Councilor Ash.
Mr. President, in light of all the testimony, I would move that we recommend the recommendation of this committee, the mayor's recommendation, to approve the recommendation.
Mr. Clerk, do I have to close the public hearing first before we vote? And so, do we need a motion to close the public hearing?
I think, I'm sorry.
Yes, you could take a motion to close the public hearing.
All right.
Oh, so moved.
All right, motion made by Councilor Ash to close the public hearing, seconded by Councilor Ash. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
What's the, William Ferry?
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On the motion to close the public hearing, Councilor Edwards. No. Councilor Allen.
No.
No. Councilor Rook. Absent. Councilor Gomez.
No.
No. Councilor Walsh.
No.
No. Councilor Marks Williams.
No.
No. Councilor Ash.
No.
No. Councilor Twiggs. Absent. Councilor Shea.
No.
No. Councilor Fenton.
No.
No. Councilor Hurst.
No.
No. Councilor Bud Williams.
No.
No. Councilor Ramos.
No. Motion fails. Councilor Gomez.
This is a point of, I'm going to be very brief. I'm not going to grandstand, I promise. Mr. Allen, just for a point of information for some of the residents that are here, last year, did we raise the residential fee percentage for residents? The rate, did we raise the rate?
The tax rate was level, $19.66.
All right, for CIP, what was the percentage that the rate was raised last year for businesses?
I think we went from $38.60 the previous year to $39.07, so about 47 cents.
So about 47 cents. So businesses in the city last year, aside from our residents, seen about 40% increase on their rate. Am I accurate? About 40%? I mean
47 cents last year.
47 cents, I apologize. All right, this year, the proposed is 18 more cents versus the 3% that we're proposing from your committee and also what the mayor has proposed.
Right.
All right, so it's fair to say that, you know, residents last year, aside from being assessed, and that was their rate increase, because some folks have come to the public hearing stating that their taxes went up, when in fact, their houses were just assessed for more money.
Absolutely.
And you
correct.
said usually you guys receive on abatements about 2,000, but the last 2 years you received around 800.
Yeah, the last few years, the numbers have been under 1,000.
All right, so do you believe with the tax rate proposed that we passed that those abatements might go up this fiscal year?
At the 1969?
Yes, that we're proposing, the 3%. And
I'm confident in our values, whatever the tax rate is.
No,
Yeah.
but just
It-
seeing the
filings-
concern with some residents and educating them knowingly that in the end of December, when your bills go out, that you said you have three staff members that actually go out and assess these properties when it comes to abatements, yes?
Right.
All right, so also, how long does it take for one of your staff members primarily to go out to one of these sites or properties to assess this value during the abatement period?
Well, we send a letter to every residential homeowner whose property we haven't seen the last couple of years, who files an abatement application. And, you know, we're generally out there within a couple of weeks or so.
So when they receive their first bill, when is their first, when do they have to make their first payment?
Well, the third quarter payment would be due February 1st.
February 1st.
Right.
So you guys have 2 months from, not the ones that are looking for help or assistance. I don't have the word for you, Ron, that's why I said it that way. But I'm talking about veterans that are April 1st. But the folks for February 1st, they have two months to put in their abatement application.
We have 1 month.
They have 1 month. All right, so you guys have 1 month to put in the application, and then from that point on, you guys have 1 more month to see or to assess all these properties in the city?
They file, say, on January 15th. We send them a letter, you know, by the first or second week of February, and then we're generally there, say, later in February, and we have 3 months from the date of filing. So they file January 15th, hypothetically. We have until April 15th to make a decision.
So that abatement process, so what, if a person was waiting for their abatement, will they be penalized while waiting for this process to happen?
We always advise people to pay their taxes so that they won't potentially lose their right to an appeal. The application says it, all our material says it, and we advise them personally to do that.
So we encourage folks, regardless of whatever the will of the council and we pass today, to pay the December bill by February 1st, and then from there, if it's reassessed, you guys would refund them whatever money.
Right, potentially reduce.
I guess, I'm just asking. You guys would...
We can make a decision that might result in an abatement, a less amount due May 1st. May 1st would be the fourth and final payment.
Do you believe 3, with your staff that you have, are enough staff members to handle, let's say if there was like a climb and people wanting abatements more than 800?
Well, it depends. I mean, we've been adequately staffed for the volume that we've had, and you know, we'll do our best to meet the demand.
All right, and just for some people that have like don't understand words that like the word asset. When you mean assets, when I'm just piggybacking on his question, what are assets that they need to be worried about, that they need to put on that paperwork or that form?
Yeah, the material is very specific. You know, bank accounts, CDs, stocks,
cars,
bonds,
stocks, things like
motor
that.
vehicle.
All right.
Yeah.
No, the reason why the question was is this: some folks have certain assets of value that they have, and then to make the payment, obviously they would have to sell or figure out whatever it takes to make sure that the bill gets paid. I'm talking about seniors primarily, because sometimes it gets to the point when their value of their house has been assessed, they live on a fixed income, property goes up, wages have been stagnated, so you know we're playing up and down. Some of these people are going to be put into burden. Not saying it's you primarily doing it, just saying the way that their houses are assessed and how we're bringing up property values and CIP. It's just I deal with the poorest district in Massachusetts, and I need to figure out how I'm going to tell my constituents that regardless of whatever the will of the council is, that 3% can make or break if they're going to eat or not. And it's not your fault. I'm just making that known and clearing that up and making it, and people have to understand that's what actually people are fighting. That's why people are here, and I appreciate your answers. I just have to clarify if they have time, because sometimes you have to figure out with time frame, if they have time frame, how to get the money, who they have to borrow it from, try to make sure that the payments are made, because you know it's fantastic. We're 9 years out of a housing crisis. So where we're at now, it's good that our housing is going up, but it's a lot to think about, and that's it. And I appreciate your answers. Thank you, and I'm done, and we can move to close the hearing.
If we can help with any questions or outside the meeting, I'm
of course
very accessible.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Okay.
Councilor Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to highlight a component of what Councilor Gomez mentioned, and that is the progress that we've made with respect to the residential rate. 8 years ago, actually it'd be 9, when we had a control board in town, we had the highest residential rate in the Commonwealth and the highest business tax rate in the Commonwealth. That's no longer the case. And if you look back over the course of the last 4 years, 4 years ago, the residential rate was 1971. 3 years ago, we reduced the rate to 1976, and then again to 1966. Last year, we held the rate at 1966. So we have made a tremendous amount of progress, and the extent to which bills are increasing is directly correlated and associated with the fact of having increased assessed values. So I wanted to highlight that point, and the only question I want to ask for Chairman Allen is regarding internal city documentation and information sharing. I had a constituent get up earlier and reference that a house which is adjacent to hers, which was condemned, actually had an increase in property tax assessment this year. Understandably, you can't make it out to every property. There's a lot of homes in the city. We have a lot of geographic area to cover. I'm thrilled that you think you have adequate staffing. But with respect to that particular issue, that determination is a municipal determination made by the building commissioner, similar to a building permit. So if I redo my bathroom, I pull a building permit, I'm assuming you get a copy of it. Is that right? Do you get that
We
stuff?
get a copy of every permit.
So, but does it work the other way? So you get notification when there's improvements done to the property. I put on a new roof, I put on new siding, new bathroom. Does it work the other way? Do you get notification from the building commissioner if he's condemned the house, or, for example, if it's burned down. Similarly, if the ordinance squad has written a half a dozen tickets for blight under the blight ordinance in the last 6 months, are those things that we have appropriate information sharing channels within City Hall and Tapley Street so that the assessors have that data in order to make the best educated guess on market value?
Yes. The code enforcement is very, forthcoming with us, and systems are in place to capture that information.
So generally speaking, if there was a condemnation, how would you know? What's the process that they would alert the assessors by? Do they pick up the phone? Is there a form that's filled out? How do you get notified?
There are documents on which they would notify us. Our guys are out in the field. They see boarded up properties, recent activities. So we would generally, capture it that way and make the appropriate change on the property. I don't know the specifics here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mean to get into the specifics because there are, as you said, 30,000 plus individual parcels, and we can't get everyone exactly right. But one theme that comes up time and again in this body, Mr. President, is information sharing amongst departments at City Hall. We hear it all the time when it comes to ordinance violations and whether or not those are making it to the right department to end up on the property tax bill through that legislation that this council passed several months ago. And so I just want to make sure that we're vigilant of that we're doing everything that we can to be fair to taxpayers so that the assessed value that they have is as close as we can possibly get it to be to the fair market value.
If there are no further questions, I will move to close the public hearing, and then we can continue debate amongst ourselves as to the tax levy. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to reiterate, as my colleague, Councilor Williams said, there needs to be some mechanism that is in place to help mitigate the costs for these property taxes that are on the rise, and I don't see them going down anytime soon. Whether that's in the course of, and I'm sure that my employer is not going to be happy with me saying this, with nonprofits paying their fair share, if that's the case, then that needs to, there needs to be some due diligence on this body's part, as well as some of our entities from the city, to make sure that's the case. And I will not, I intend to vote no on this, and I will do so until there is more due diligence on the part of everyone involved in the city to make sure that our residents are not bearing the cost of increased property taxes with stagnant salaries.
All right, if there's no further questions, I will now close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion on the floor?
Same question, same motion that we adopt the mayor's recommendation.
So would you like to clarify your motion, Councilor Ash? We will refer to the tax rate as suggested by the clerk in reference to the residential factor.
Residential factor.
I think the chairman has to make the recommendation of the tax committee, I believe.
Any member of the body can make the recommendation. Well, there's currently a motion on the floor, so are you withdrawing your motion, or?
I'll allow him to make the recommendation.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you. I make a motion to recommend a residential factor of 78.7705. Is that the right number? 06? 06. It's just my vision. It's not the 78.7706.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Allen, seconded by Councilor Ash. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the FY18 residential tax factor of 78.7716% for the city of Springfield. A yes vote is to approve this residential tax factor. A no vote is not to approve the tax factor. Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Mr. Wilson, could you just repeat the factors?
78.7706.
06, great. Thank you, yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook. Absent. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
No.
No. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Twiggs. Absent, Counselor Shay.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Fenton.
No.
No, Counselor Hurst.
No.
No, Counselor Bud Williams.
No.
No, Counselor Ramos.
No. Not sufficient.
Insufficient.
Fails?
Motion fails.
Council Fenton.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we adopt a residential factor of 72.59 for fiscal year 2018, resulting in a residential rate of 1968.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Fenton, seconded by Councilor Hurst. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Delighted to answer the councilwoman's question. This would result in a penny decrease on the residential rate from the previous proposal and a 3-cent increase on the commercial rate from the previous proposal.
Thank you.
Roll call.
On setting the FY18 residential tax factor at 78.7259%. Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Rook. Absent, Counselor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Marcus Williams.
No.
No, Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Twiggs. Absent, Counselor Shay.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Bud Williams.
No.
No, Counselor Ramos.
Yes.
More than sufficient.
More than sufficient. Motion passes. All right. We will now stand adjourned. We'll take a brief recess and we'll get started with our hearings meeting in just 1 minute. The councilors and their guests, please take their seats. All right, the time is now 7:36. We will get started with our hearings meetings. Councilors and their guests, please take their seats. My apologies to those who are in the audience for the hearings meeting for the delay. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Counselor Edwards. Present. Counselor Allen. Present. Counselor Rook. Absent. Counselor Gomez.
Present.
Present. Counselor Walsh.
Present.
Present. Counselor Marcus Williams.
Present.
Present. Counselor Ash. Counselor Ash. Here, Counselor Twiggs. Absent. Counselor Shay.
Present.
Present. Counselor Fenton.
Present.
Present. Counselor Hurst. Present. Counselor Bud Williams. Present. Counselor Ramos.
Present. Councilors and our guests, please stand and join me for a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are also joined by Councilor-elect Jesse Letterman. And we did receive some notification during the previous meeting. There are folks at home that could not hear all of our testimony, and so if you could just please make sure to turn on your microphone when you're speaking and turn that off when you're not speaking. Item number 1, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 1 is an application for a special permit for motor vehicle rentals at the location known as 12 Odessa Street. This item was on at the last hearings meeting, and it was continued to tonight.
This is a hearings meeting of the Springfield City Council. Petitioners and those speaking in favor will be given 20 minutes to make their presentation to the council. The opposition will then be given 20 minutes to address the council, and then there will be a 5-minute rebuttal. I will keep the hearing open for additional questions from the council. At the conclusion of that, I will close the public hearing and leave, and then we will move on to final comments, motions, and amendments. Will the petitioner please step forward, state your name and address for the record? You have 20 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Vicky. I'm from Tolodesa Street, Indian Orchard, for the U-Haul permit, special permit for U-Haul rental. Yeah.
What would you like to tell us about your petition?
We're just trying to improve the business around the area, and for the rental, I think it's a good location for U-Haul rental, so that's why we applied for the permit, special permit for that. Other than that, I don't have nothing to say.
Is there anything else you would like to tell the council?
No.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. So again, if there anyone else who would like to speak in favor, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Please step forward. Are there any questions from the council? Councilor Edwards.
Just to my colleagues, I believe we may have a letter from the Indian Orchard Citizen Council dated December 7th that is in reference to this item, and that is the recommendation of their committee that the property, this will be approved, and that the owners have in fact made visible improvements on the conditions of the site, and they are very comfortable in recommending this to be approved.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there any other questions from the council? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Any final comments, motions, or amendments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On granting the special permit, Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rook. Absent, Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ash. Yes, Councilor Twiggs. Absent, Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Bud Williams. Yes, Councilor Ramos.
Yes. More than sufficient. Permit is approved. Councilor Edwards on the reasons.
The specific site is, yes, the specific site is an appropriate location for such a use, structure, or condition. The use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use to incorporate the planning staff analysis into the decision as the basis of finding.
All in favor of the reasons say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is an application for a special permit for a motor vehicle service station at the property known as 714 State Street.
Good evening. My name is Bob Bolduc. I'm the founder of Pride. Pride's offices are located at 246 Cottage Street, Springfield. We've been in Springfield for the last 40 years, and we look forward to many more. The site in question is at the corner of State Street and Thompson. If you recall, that's the former Riverview Inn, which was bought by Redevelop Springfield, and we would like to purchase it from them and totally redevelop it. It will also include our purchase of the building next to it at 714, which is on the corner of Westminster, so that we will then be clearing the entire lot and proposing a whole new facility. There are others here who would speak also to that tonight. I can show you a picture of what it'll look like, and then a site plan, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay? And I'll be quick because we all know there's a football game coming up.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward.
Would you like to see the rendering first?
I'd like to see the...
Okay. So...
Fine.
This is what it'll look like from the intersection at State and Thompson. You notice that the building that's there now will be gone. It's been vacant for a long time, had a Subway, had a Family Dollar, now has a wireless store. The wireless store, the former tenant just signed a 3-year lease with them, so we will have to allow them to come into our building, so we're going to make our building bigger on the east side, and they'll have a separate entrance and all, but attached to ours, so we have to honor the lease. Okay? The building, it'll be a large building. I think it's in the 5,000 square foot range. We'll see that in a minute. We'll have our standard gas station configuration out front, and it will be totally remodeled. And it'll have the latest with all our new technology and all our new features. Here's the site. I'll turn this one 90 degrees so you can see it from the same view. The perspective we just saw was here, looking this way. So here's State, here's Thompson, that's Westminster. You can see the pumps, you can see the building itself, you can see a large parking behind it, and the purchase also includes some land up here, which is residence, and we will sell off as residence. Over here, we're talking to the neighbors. There's this vacant city lot, and we have offered to redevelop that for the neighborhood into either a family market and or an accessible, one of the new style handicap accessible for young people playgrounds. It will be the first in this area. It's a concept that Paige Thayer from Redevelop Springfield brought to our attention, and we think it's a super idea. We have some space available here, hopefully for a bank or something, because the area is in dire need of a bank, just as they need a gas station, and they certainly need all the healthy food options that we will bring. Okay. Any questions?
Councilor Walsh.
Well, thank you, and I think that looks like a huge improvement for the neighborhood. And one of the questions we always like to ask is employees, and how many will be hired, and will you be trying to hire them from the neighborhood?
Thank you for asking that. Absolutely. We look forward to hiring them for the neighborhood. We hope, and we will, and I'm sure this will happen because it's happened in other neighborhoods where we've come into in not only this city but in other towns and all. We will hire 100% of the people from the neighborhood. We are looking forward to giving young people in the neighborhood careers. It's not a HR department in Pride, it's a career development department. And we are very proud of the fact that we bring in young kids, and we give them, sometimes we have to give them a work ethic, sometimes we teach them a few lessons by giving them some time off, but we usually end up with an excellent crew that stands up tall, dresses well, and we're happy to have represent Pride, and we can look forward to its successes. That is one of the primary reasons why we're going in here.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Speaking of Pride, I think we would be remiss if we did not, as a group, recognize all the good work that your business has done over 40 years, but particularly in the last few years, your generosity to the community and to those in need, and coming forward whenever there's a community drive, and of course, sharing that prize of the ticket I did not win. Wish I had been in Chicopee that day.
Nor did I. Thank you very much.
Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to commend you on your another investment in the city of Springfield. I know that you have actually one slated right after this one.
Right after this, yeah.
Exactly. I did realize that neither this development or the one that is coming after indicates any hours of operation. So I just wanted to know what's your plan around that.
Very simple. The hours of operation, certainly, as you know, the next item before you is for us to be able to do the very same thing at the intersection of Breckwood and Wilbraham Road, across from Duggan. There's a very rundown, used to be a Shell station there, and we've made an arrangement to buy that from Mr. Jafar, who is moving back to his home country, and we'll be buying that from him, and we'll be totally raising and remodeling that also. That is already 24 hours. All of our other stations in the city are 24 hours, and we would like this one, we need to have this one 24 hours also. We live in a 24-hour world now. I live in a 24-hour world. Public safety people do. A lot of working people do. It's a 24-hour society, and we feel it's absolutely necessary. We also are convinced and have proven that it will be safer being open. If we have to close any place now, that's when the break-ins happen. The police will be surrounding there. God, they'll be lined up to break into the places. So we've gone to 24 hours all over. We know what to do. Our cash control is excellent. Our security is excellent. We set the gold standard in cameras and security. We have our own internal loss prevention department back at corporate that watches these. We're on top of it. We feel very comfortable with it.
Well, determining the hours of operation, of course, is at the will of the body, but I'm not sure, Mr. President, if we will have to have a condition that states that those 24 hours of operation, but if so, then I will do so when the time is appropriate.
Councilor Burr Williams.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Bob, for another outstanding project. Just a couple of questions. You made reference to you said it's going to be either a market or a playground?
Right. A neighborhood, if I said market, I meant to say garden. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought, yeah, market sounded real good because I've known that...
Well, there's a market there already. And in fact, here's what else we've, I think...
Where?
Is it Friends? The farm, yeah, but what's the group that runs it?
Market where?
I'm sorry?
There's no market there, Bob.
Yeah, there is.
No, no. I'm talking a market. I'm not talking about a site we have one in Hancock where the city does that, the farm site. Yeah. A market, I thought you said market, that we'd have a store with a market to be open. That's not what we're talking about. Because
no, it is. Liz will speak to that in a minute.
Okay, you said that or a playground. What's going to determine what you do there?
The neighborhood. We've met with the McKnight Council on multiple occasions, and they are amenable to both. At the time, we weren't aware of the concept of a neighborhood garden there, but Liz was kind enough to bring that to my attention.
But you mean neighborhood garden, not a market?
Yes, I corrected myself.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, you got my hopes up when you said market. I thought,
well, there'll be a market also, which Liz will address when she comes up.
But because I know that site had been slated in conversations with Develop Springfield many years ago to try to put a real market there, like a ShopRite, a Big Y, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So the neighborhood's going to determine, at what point you're going to determine what you're going to put there, after you get...
That's up to the neighborhood, McKnight Council. We've met with them several times already.
I think this body's going to have to approve of whatever you do there.
They will be back for approval, whatever is involved with that.
So you just want
It's not our property, it's city property.
Right.
We've offered to do the site development at no charge as part of our project.
After your project.
After it's approved.
Let me go there. Now, in terms of the playground, what does the traffic study suggest there? That's a one-way street going downtown, just if you're going down on one side, west, to going east back the other way.
You mean Westminster?
Yeah, right on the corner. That's a pretty busy intersection. Are they going to change the traffic pattern there, the lights? Have you been working with the city?
No. Maybe Mr. Dromey can address that when we come to it. That's been looked at.
I would think that'd be Chris Signoli if it's a traffic.
Yeah, it's not, I'm going to say it's not me.
It's not.
I mean, DPW has to fully review the plans. The traffic study and all that has been issued to the DPW, so ultimately they still have a review over them.
DPW hasn't signed off on this yet.
I believe they're in the process of reviewing it, but they don't believe, their initial comments is they don't believe there's anything that's going to affect the overall site plan. There obviously is going to be tweaks to the intersection at State Street and
My original question, they have not signed off on this.
I do not believe DPW has signed off.
Thank you, sir. That's all I'm saying. So you got to go back through DPW, I understand that.
And just for a point of clarification with regard to the vacant lot, there have been discussions with Pat Sullivan as well, because ultimately, whatever ends up there, I think, it is a city-owned property, so if it turns into a playground, obviously Parks would have to have the long-term maintenance of that particular lot. So there's still going to be discussions on what it ultimately ends up with, and Pat Sullivan obviously needs to be involved in all those discussions.
Yeah, Pat, because there was just a huge conversation on playgrounds last week or a week before that.
Well, I met with Mr. Sullivan, and he would be happy to maintain it if it gets built.
That's the city maintaining it.
That's correct.
Right, okay. All right, so at that point, you're coming up now. So Bob, just one more how many employees do you anticipate there?
25,
okay,
somewhere in there.
That's a good number.
Good number.
And And it's that,
And the other nice thing is that once we get into a neighborhood and we get to know the people and they start to apply, we can very often hire them and move them to other neighborhoods where we have a need.
we'll help you with that.
And that always happens.
That
That's
won't be a
happened.
problem, that won't be a problem finding.
No, I know it's not, and it works well.
So let me ask you, so coming up State, you go in and then come out on Thompson?
Safety.
And out, or can you come out?
When you're coming up, if you come up State and you're heading easterly,
right,
you have to turn in at Thompson, and then you can enter the property. If you
come back out into State.
Come back out into State, that's
And you
correct.
Coming down.
Coming down, you enter, we'll be moving the driveway way to the far end, near the funeral parlor. You'll come in there, and then you can go out Thompson.
Okay.
And back at the
That
left.
was my question, okay. That makes sense to bring it back, which gives you a
Correct.
wider area.
Plenty of room for queuing. We feel pretty good that DPW will be happy with it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Elizabeth Ogilvy. I live at 11 Dartmouth Street on the corner of Bay in the McKnight neighborhood. Surprisingly, I did not come prepared to speak tonight. I know many of you are surprised by that. And I, a year and a half ago, would have not thought that I would come supporting this development. Living in Mason Square, it is disappointing at times that the level of energy is not put into deciding developmental projects in the same rate or even like 10% as is in other neighborhoods like downtown. I'll be transparent. It broke my heart that a Family Dollar was okayed for development on Walnut Street, across the street from a garden where an organization that I chair, Gardening the Community, has been working on teaching healthy living, healthy eating, growing food, and feeding on a regular basis through our community share program 80 families a year, employing a number of children from Mason Square, the North End, and the South End, teaching them entrepreneurial skills. 2 years ago, 3 of our children were the top 3 graduates at Renaissance High School. They are at Swarthmore, Emory, and George Washington University. I also chair the Springfield Food Policy Council. For those of you who don't know, the Policy Council is an independent body endorsed by the mayor. Mr. Dromey is one of the 49% of the city appointees who serve on that body, and we work industriously to improve food across the city. I am very proud to tell you that every single school in Mason Square has a school garden, including the Early Learning Center, which I helped build. The library in Mason Square has a garden, and we have 7 new large gardens. Some of you will remember that I bought the lot that was Primus Mason's homestead and built a garden, and half of my neighbors eat more of the food than I get to eat, and I'm incredibly proud of that development. That was a blighted lot. So I volunteer at 2 of the elementary schools. I tell you all of that to say I sleep at 11 Dartmouth Street. I live all over Mason Square and most of Springfield. When Mr. Bolduc first came to the McKnight Council, I was a member of that board, and I was vehemently opposed to this. We have the highest asthma rates in the city. We have in the state, in Mason Square, we have the highest childhood obesity, we have the highest hypertension, we have the highest adult obesity, and we have the highest diabetes rates in the state. And these are all preventable illnesses that are food-related. So you can imagine why I was disappointed. And I had a meeting with him as a member of that council, and then I had a meeting with him as a member of the Springfield Food Policy Council Steering Committee, which I now chair. I also served as the only representative from Springfield and one of 2 from Hampden County on the Massachusetts State Food System Plan. I live around food because it is one of the quickest ways that we can improve the health and life outcomes, particularly for the majority of people of color living in this city. But in the last several months, we have had a meeting of the mind, and I would like to think a meeting of the heart. I asked him to be a hero for our community. I asked him to build the very best pride that he could. I understand economic development. I have an undergraduate degree in economic development from the University of Texas. I have a master's degree in economics from MIT, and I also have a master's degree in theology from Harvard. So I'm as bright as they come. And I came back home to Springfield because I love the city that I was born in. I grew up on Lebanon Street. We lived in 6 Corners when my husband was the assistant principal at Commerce. So I'm the regular person. But as Councilor Walsh noted, when I bought my lot, I'm also raising a superhero. I have an 8-year-old. So if this was going to happen, and I knew it was going to happen because there weren't that many people who wanted to invest at what was going to be close to $1 million or $1.1 million just to acquire. And I knew, unfortunately, where we are in this city, we don't put the same kind of energy in some neighborhoods. And so I decided to help make it the best that I could. Mr. Bolduc has agreed to let the farmers market that's been operating on that vacant lot with the permission of Develop Springfield for the last 2 years. He's agreed to let us use a corner of that lot until he identifies the bank that's been built. More importantly, he has listened and negotiated with me around the type of food that will be inside. Instead of fried chicken, he's committed to us serving rotisserie chicken. And I like a piece of fried chicken as much as anyone, but I told him if he put fried chicken, I would go to every one of your houses and lay on the steps and pretend to be having a heart attack. He also agreed to let us put a pop-up farmers market within the market. This is incredibly important because right now, the state of Massachusetts has a program called the Healthy Incentives Project, and that enables people who receive SNAP, and Springfield has the highest number of SNAP recipients in the state. For the next 2.5 years, when you shop at a farm stand or a farmer's market, there's an additional benefit that low-income families receive that goes from $40 up to $80 a month. And so he recognizes that when people come in the store, but they can't buy it from him, they have to buy it from a farm stand. So he's giving up space to allow us to sell that fresh produce in the store. And he has made a commitment to stocking other SNAP available benefits. It's not produce in the store. It's my hope that people will get in the habit of buying fresh vegetables. There's an assumption that we don't want that. Councilor Williams was mistaken when he thought this was the lot that was slated for the grocery store. It is not. It is the land that's between Oak Street and going down to the Burger King, and Mr. Frontalakis can be more specific, but we want a bigger grocery store than Mr. Bolduc can provide, but we realize that demonstrating what people will buy, I hope, will help attract grocery stores. The lot on Westminster, it's my hope to not put a burden on the city. I've reached out to the Conway School to ask them to help design an accessible garden that also has playground equipment. 2 of the homeowners on Westminster Street are home daycare providers, and it would be great for them to be able to take their kids out, have them pick produce, and play at the same time. He's also agreed to use one of his food stations as a micro incubator. We have a number of folks who are trying to make a living as entrepreneurs because we don't tell the truth about our unemployment rate. We get all upset when they talk about 8%, but every person in this room knows that for young people under the age of 40, particularly men of color, that unemployment rate for those who have never been unemployed and those who are chronically unemployed is somewhere around 40%. So we recognize that entrepreneurship is the way to go. I know I'm going on for a long time, but you're going to have 3 folks in opposition who live in my community, and that's the only reason I got up to speak. One of them opposed the purchase of my lot based on the fact that he thought it should stay in the hands of African Americans. And I don't know, maybe I was lighter that day, but in any case, it's important to me that you understand I maybe have honed the ability to speak a little more than some of my neighbors, but I'm just like my neighbors. We want the best we can for our kids. And right now, what I believe our best opportunity is to help Mr. Bolduc build the best pride that he can. In the future, I want to ask you, you got to be superheroes. Stop looking for silver bullets. Put your hearts and your minds into the neighborhood. I intend to be the same way that the mayor was. No disrespect, this is just allegory. He was like a dog with a bone around that casino, and you can trust that I'm going to be a dog with a bone around bringing better, healthier options. Where we eat, live, work, and play have more to do with our health, life, and outcomes than our genetics. And this council needs to understand that and get behind doing the best you can for every neighborhood in the city. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, and
Councilor Williams.
Thank you, and she's renowned statewide and citywide. And I just wanted her to give us a background of why I'm going to support this for Bob Bolduc, is that until we get a grocery store / supermarket in Mason Square with fresh produce and fruit and what we have, this is probably the best thing until we can get what we really need there. So Bob, I just want to commend you for reaching out and really working with the community, because this is really cutting edge. And hopefully, if this works, that other urban areas within the Commonwealth will use this boilerplate and mimic what you have done, because really, health is our wealth, and we know that Mason Square is a food desert. We realize, we understand that, and her with her passion, she gets all over, gets me excited when she comes to the State House. She was down in the State House about a month ago. Just so exciting, the work you do. So Bob, it's a great project. It's cutting edge, and I know you're sacrificing and you're putting your, I'm going to say your money where your mouth is, but in a sense, I think you are.
Thank you. We're doing that. I would also point out that our store on West Street in Springfield has sold fresh produce from day one and is known by the Springfield Health Department and has been used as their model for both at the state and national programs for some time now. So this is not new to us. We're bringing that same package here.
I know it's not new, but you as a businessman, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. So it's a commitment that you do over and beyond the call of duty. And I just want to commend and thank you. We'll listen to the other side of the arguments, but it makes a difference, I think, especially to me in terms of representing my state representative district and being the city council, that we realize that it's a food desert. We got to do a better job of getting fresh stuff. When you look at the obesity rate, the diabetes, the asthma rate, and some of it is diet related. So I just want to thank you, and as usual, you was outstanding, Ms. Ogilvy.
We have about 4 minutes left for the proponents. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Mr. President, my name is Nick Fintralakis, and I represent Develop Springfield. We're at 83 Maple Street in Springfield. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this particular project. Just to offer a brief history, Develop Springfield acquired this site in 2013, and as you may recall, the former River Inn site was there, which was the site of frequent police visits, code violations, and a real disruption and problem for the neighborhood. Our intent as a nonprofit organization, economic development-focused organization, is to help the city redevelop these types of properties into productive reuse in partnership with the community. When we acquired that site, we raised the building, we did some site preparation and prepped the site, and began to look for a developer that would take this on from a private perspective. We followed the State Street Redevelopment Program that many of you may recall. That was a collaborative effort with the State Street Alliance to identify a use for that site, and that particular plan called for either a fast casual or some type of a retail establishment, and we feel that this project certainly fits that need. We also passed on several projects that came before us, several fast food restaurants that came and were ready to buy cash in hand. Yet we worked with the community, with Liz and others, and the neighborhood council, to ensure that the project that we would sell to in terms of developer was going to be a responsible developer that was engaged with the community, that was going to meet the community's needs. And we found that in Mr. Bolduc and Pride Stores. I think it's very safe to say that we're all familiar with his products, with the work that he does, with the respect that he has for his neighbors and his community, and we're very proud to be affiliated in this way with him. And so just kind of want to provide that context for how we're involved. We're basically just looking to transact and sell the property to Mr. Bullock and have a positive development on that site. Just briefly on the supermarket project, as was mentioned, that is a different site. It is our intent to continue to proceed with that. We're a little stalled at the current time, but we are actively engaged with that. We do have some interesting opportunities that are in existence with that as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our 20 minutes for the proponents. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Damian Phillips. I know most of you from social gatherings and things like that. I live on the Dartmouth Terrace in Springfield. I was on the executive board of McKnight Neighborhood Council when Mr. Bolduc came in front of us. And all I can say is beware of the wolf in sheep's clothing. What he talked about business generation for fast foods on State Street. He was speaking of McDonald's. Everybody was so for McDonald's. McDonald's is the cure-all to the blight on State Street, until I pulled the crime files on McDonald's. Prostitution, drugs, assaults. That's why McDonald's did not get that property. I spoke to Mr. Bolduc for about a half an hour prior to his first meeting at the McKnight Neighborhood Council. I suggested to him that he does a trend-setting program, healthy food, no sugar, no tobacco products. And he was like, geez, those are really good ideas. A deli, fresh meats, vegetables. And he was like, that's a great idea. Remember that conversation? I'm sure you don't. This rendering, this is a beautiful smoke and mirrors display of just another business that wants to be put on State Street. Notice the rendering does not show State Street. It shows Thompson Street. What he doesn't show is the neighboring houses around Thompson Street. He doesn't show, well, he does kind of right here, but he didn't bring it up, the drive-through window that would be in operation 24 hours a day. But it kind of befuddles me that we talked about a whole different design to the front of the store, so it would work in unison with the buildings from American International College, so it doesn't look like a circus right next to an educational institution. All right? This is not the rendering we're seeing today. We're not seeing the real picture here. So what I'm saying, Mr. Bolduc has had opportunities to change the frontage of the building, which I would have accepted, change the gas pump area so it looks a little more historical, a little more dignified, someplace that has a little pride in the area, but they're not. Develop Springfield, they just want to sell the property. They don't care, they want money, they want to sell the property. We need a good and a proper use to this land. He didn't build the playground prior to him coming before the council. He hasn't donated money to the homeless, the people in need. He hasn't created these gardens. It was Liz Ogilvie who did that. Liz Ogilvie has an opportunity with Mr. Bolduc to create what she wants in the neighborhood. What she wants is needed. It's truly needed. We have obesity problems. Oh, let's go and buy some rotisserie chicken from Bob's place, but let's grab a 32-ounce soda off the bar. Tell me, Bob, can you tell me 5 products in your store that are healthy for customers? Just 5. Pick any 5. Is it the candy bars on the shelf, the sugar on the shelf, the Mrs. Murphy's donuts that you sell in the rest of your stores, the soda that fills your cases? So maybe you have milk and water that you sell that aren't filled with sugar? How is that healthy for our neighborhoods?
Sir, if you can address the council.
Sorry. So what I'm saying, this is not healthy for the people in our neighborhoods. I asked them not to sell tobacco products in the store. Let's make a trend-setting store, a healthy store, a store good for the neighborhood. Didn't happen. Bob is a businessman. He knows how to run gas stations. This is what he does. He eliminates the nasty factors. In fact, he talks about his A1 security. Well, let me tell you about his A1 security on East Columbus Avenue one night when I came home from work. I was in there with one employee while she was mopping the floor. There was another one behind Dunkin' Donuts, but I guess that aren't sugar products either. They're low-fat now. So while I was in the store got robbed. This guy came in off the street, 3 o'clock in the morning. The girl was mopping the floor. I was grabbing a coffee going back to the house. He robbed the store. So much for his big security. No store on State Street in that neighborhood is open 24 hours except for CVS. We have 3 markets right across, almost just across from AIC College. They are of a subculture situation. These are not supermarkets. These are just ghetto fabulous stores. His store, ask him if he's going to take food stamps. I bet you he is. And guess who's going to provide that money? Our state. So where is his income coming from? His gas pumps or the food stamp money? I don't know. I'm asking the council if he's not willing to make modifications within his plan to eliminate sugar products, to make it a healthy store, in fact, to not approve this. If he wants to regenerate a brand-new store, and oh, by the way, we also have another gas station that the McKnight Council did approve, and that's on Taylor and Armour Street. It is a huge project. We gave our blessing to this company to build this gas station, and this company is dumping tons of money into the area, and this was a big area of urban blight. And this company has come in wholeheartedly, dug the place up, ripped the trees down, and they are rehabbing this whole section. So this is kind of like Home Depot and Lowe's. A Home Depot pops up, the next thing you know, a Lowe's pops up. A Lowe's pops up someplace else, the next thing you know, another Home Depot pops up. This is like just greed. That's all it is. We could have a nice, and I told Bob originally in our conversation, we have a couple bad gas stations on that street. I would love to see those eliminated and be replaced with a nice clean gas station and a healthy market that people can buy produce from, fresh vegetables, and eliminate the sugar products and the tobacco products. Thank you.
About approximately 11 and a half minutes left for the opposition. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is David Gaby at 1105 Worthington Street, and I came down here to speak in opposition for all of the reasons that Ms. Ogilvy was citing. In fact, I was influenced by her speech at the McKnight Neighborhood Council. I think besides the nutrition issues and the asthma rate and the obesity rate and so forth that she cited, I'm also looking at our de-development of State Street. As we have de-developed Main Street, we are busy de-developing State Street. We went from the Oaks Inn, which was originally a large restaurant with a hotel in back of it, to building the Travelodge, which was an 80-room, 3-story modern hotel, which the city of Springfield tore down because there was a disreputable group of people that had been subsidized to move there by the state of Massachusetts. So once again, as in the Hotel Charles, as in many other things, we blame the building for what the people that we didn't like that were in the building, and we justified demolition. So anyway, I say that to say that we're going from a relatively dense development to highway-oriented development, and it's not smart growth. I mean, I don't want to be insulting, but all across Massachusetts, people are moving towards denser development, transit-oriented development, more walkable kinds of cities and neighborhoods, and away from highway-oriented or suburban culture. Now, having said that, I'm from a family, with 5 daughters. 2 of those daughters have worked at Pride. Experiences for my family. We've shopped at Pride for many years. I have a lot of respect and appreciation for what Mr. Bolduc has been able to accomplish. I think that looking at where Springfield is economically and talking about the plan for State Street that Mr. Fintralakis was talking about, this is probably the best kind of development that is accessible to us right now. Teddy Roosevelt has famously said that politics is the art of the possible. I could draw you a picture, and I'd be happy to draw you a picture of beautiful development with 6- and 8-story buildings that we could build up and down State Street. I don't know how to do that right now. I don't think our market's ready. I'm not sure if our people are ready. I'd like to get there. I happen, after listening to what I just heard, to have a lot of confidence in our leader of the Food Policy Council. I have a lot of confidence in Pride. I think that they have a big challenge in front of them because of all the things that Mr. Phillips was saying. It has been a kind of a hostile environment for retailing on State Street. We have a series of the Getty Station is a good example of our failures. We need to work with Mr. Bolduc to make this Pride work, make it the best thing that it can be. And I guess I can't say, after saying all that, I can't ask you to disapprove the proposal. I'd like you all to work with it, possibly making restrictions, helping make sure the DPW does whatever needs to be done to make sure that traffic does not damage the residential neighborhood. Because we all know that the part of McKnight that's near State Street has been damaged over the years by traffic, whether it's from Kings or the Oaks Inn. A lot of our demolitions have been on the State Street side of the neighborhood, but hopefully with that kind of a commitment, we can all move forward. I'm not sure that it needs to go to committee. It sounds like Mr. Bolduc is happy to discuss those things that can support the neighborhood, but I think, I'm just saying, since we're under opposition, that I have to say we're opposed to ongoing de-development of Springfield, and we'd like you to look at this as part of that long-term process. But we appreciate Mr. Bolduc's efforts.
Thank you. About 6.5 minutes left for the opposition. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Say again, if there's anyone who would like to speak in opposition, please step forward. Seeing none, we will now go on to a 5-minute rebuttal. Is there anything from the proponents?
I will not lower myself to dispute any of the things or all of the things that Mr. Phillips said, but I would point out two things. I think he has me confused with the McDonald's developer. That was not I. We came along after the McDonald's project was rejected by the McKnight Council. The other is I would like to submit the vote of the McKnight Council, which was, and I read it to you, the McKnight Board voted unanimously to support the proposal. And I'd like it back after you make copies of it, but it certainly disputes the fact that he was there and disagreed.
That was not the first thing. Don't fall.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward. Seeing none, is there a rebuttal from the opposition? Please step forward.
Damian Phillips again, and Bob does not have to stoop down when he's at ground level and he has to look up to see anything. However, what he's talking about is a little bit of an embellishment, because we're talking about the first time he was at the McKnight Council meeting, not the second or third time he came, but the very first time. I told him no. It wasn't a unanimous vote, was it? And the rotisserie chicken, I don't see any of the stores doing it. The other thing is, all the other properties that he has located. Oh, let's go back to the McDonald's thing just for 1 second. McDonald's was the first developer that came in. That was shot down after I pulled the police reports. Then he wanted to build his Pride station after that happened. I'm not confused. I'm not senile. I'm not of that age yet. Am I, Bob? However, his Pride gas stations that are listed in the city of Springfield are not located in residential areas, are they? They are located at East Columbus Avenue, right next to the casino, a bank, whatever. Then we have Riverdale Road in West Springfield. Again, commercial area. Parker Street, Springfield, commercial area. Montgomery Street, Chicopee, commercial area. This is one of the first gas stations this man wants to build because of his greed to get all the money he possibly can to take business away from the new developer who's building the gas station on Tapley and Armory Street. He's looking to take all the money out of that particular neighborhood from the little grocery stores, the mom and pop stores, and the little gas stations. This really needs to be reevaluated. If he wants to build a store, he is a good businessman. If he wants to build a store that is acceptable to this area, with a facade that's acceptable to this area that doesn't degrade the area. When you come into Springfield, we have people coming in that are going to be coming to the casino. If they take the train from New York City, they get off the train, what do they see? The welfare building, housing authority, pawn shops, check cashing places. It's not a very good look. We need to correct that in the future. Somehow, Develop Springfield needs to fix our facade. When you get off public transportation, it's not a pretty picture what you see. When business people come up to Mass Mutual, coming up State Street, you get past the federal building, it starts to fall apart quickly when you go through Mason Square. We need to fix that. This is a Fortune 500 company, and it's an embarrassment when people come in to visit, to do business up in this area. We need to improve the entire area. Another thing that happened yesterday while I was working at AIC, there was a shooting up there on Eastern Avenue and Union Street. I was there, I heard the gunshots. They were 8 gunshots at 8:30 at night. One of them struck a man. The man was found on, I believe, Florida Street in his apartment. How that happened, I don't know. But the actual shooting was at Eastern Avenue and Union Street. There were 8 gunshots. 1 shot hit the man. Where did the other 7 bullets go? Not shortly after that, within the 12-hour period, 2 people speeding down Bay Street, drunk, with an open container in the car, hit a couple trees. We don't need a 24-hour market that is going to draw undesirable activity to a residential neighborhood. We need to help the neighborhood. As my responsibility of the McKnight Neighborhood Council was for the neighbors in the neighborhood. It wasn't black, it wasn't white, it wasn't Latin. We were neighbors. Everybody who lived in this area was a neighbor. My responsibility was for them, to their health, to their well-being, and to the betterment of the neighborhood, and to bring up the neighborhood, and to bring up the quality of life. That's what I did in the council, and that's what I'm still trying to do. Thanks.
All right, that concludes the rebuttal for the opposition. Before I close the public hearing, are there any questions from the council? Councilor Gomez.
It's more of a kind of moral comments, Mr. Boldo. So, in knowing Mr. Baldock, whenever the neighborhood had an issue, and I wasn't here when West Street was created, I wasn't sitting in this chair. And I understand some of you, and I respect Damien, I respect Mr. Gaby, I respect all of you a whole lot. I have a great relationship, actually, majority of the room. But I know for sure that this neighborhood, this parcel, since I've been alive and I went to Sci-Tech, nothing has been happening at this corner. This corner has been an eyesore for longer than as long as I can remember. And to understand, and I know, and to your point, to say that a business is a business, the tap that you referred to, it's in my ward. I met with your council. That actual gas station, that gentleman that owns like 5 more in the city. And then at the same time, he didn't promise us fresh food. He didn't promise us a garden. He didn't raise over $10,000 for Puerto Rico. He didn't supply almost $3,000 in scholarships. These are things that, and I understand that, like she said, you're a hero on your block. Like, that's your neighborhood. You want to fight for what's right, and you want the best thing for your community. But at the same time, with my experiences with Mr. Baldock, when we had an issue, he didn't have to respond. He could have sent an assistant. He could have sent somebody down here. He always shows face. In my neighborhood, down in the North End on West Street, we had a stabbing. Next day, or I'm not going to say next day, but next meeting, in a couple days, he was down at C3. He was down there showing face, sending his people down there. He operated a book. He created this truck, per se, with the Davis Foundation, and was giving books out for free to our community. On the contrary, we understand it's a business, and you have to make money to give money, and like she stated, and she spoke very eloquently that how she was against it, and she probably was one of the ones that voted with you guys that we're totally against this. But I know as a businessman in my community, Mr. Baldock has been respectful, has been transparent, and when an issue happens, that like you said, that you're afraid that people are gonna come and rob the place, he's created on our behalf, because we asked him to, a public safety plan. I believe sitting down with this gentleman and the corner, you know, it's nothing but he hires people from my neighborhood. Every time I walk in there, I see a kid that used to be in my youth program that went from just a regular cashier to actually running the place, Jose. And Jose's running all over the place, and he loves that job. But the fact of the matter is, like you said, the market's not ready. Fine, we have great things that we want our neighborhoods to look like, but that's just not what the reality is. We have somebody, instead of somebody that doesn't live here, somebody that lives in the area. The business is homegrown Western Mass. He gives back more than enough that he has to. And I understand the frustrations, but we have to move forward and work with people that, like you said, I'm happy McDonald's didn't come. But this is somebody that was born and raised here. Raised probably his children here, and now he's raising other people. Like he said, 2 of his daughters worked for him, regardless of what side you sit on. I think this is a conversation that you guys together as a community can have, because probably there's a lot of stuff that you guys can squash out. But I'm ready to support this because I know and I can stand by and say that, you know what, Bob, when we need something or the community asks for his support, he never says no.
Councilor Gomez has the floor.
I understand that there's things that you guys have to work out. Me, where I sit in my chair, I have to make sure that it's zoned appropriately, that the neighborhood board unanimously, no matter when you took your vote or not, has fully supported this, and at the same time that I know that I can trust this man. Like I trust you too, and like I trust him too. But the fact of the matter is, are we going to keep the lights on or off on State Street? And I'd rather keep them on 24 hours a day with cameras going, just like Tapley Street, what I asked them to do, to make sure that the neighborhood is safe. Because the Buddhist temple right there, there's no cameras. Something happens right there at that corner, we have no way to find out what happens. And I know his cameras work because we always go back to him and he always gives up the tape. There's some things that the neighborhood and you guys need to figure out. But I think as a business, I have to support this. And I'm just telling you this because how much respect that I have for the community and this woman and this gentleman here. That I know this is going to be up for you guys, regardless of what Bob puts there and how he sets it up and what's his vision. The vision could be changed. All you got to do is, with respect and humbleness, talk to him. And I'm telling you, he's going to figure it out because he just wants nothing but, obviously, it's a business. He wants to make money. It's just what it is. But at the same time, I believe that you can sit down with this gentleman and get exactly what you need. I don't know if he's going to take all the candy bars off the shelf. I'm diabetic. I feel you 100,000%. But every time I need a sweet tooth, I go on Pride 3 in the morning, and I feel safe.
All right, before I close the public hearing, are there any final questions from the council? Councilor Allen.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yeah, I'd like to ask a question of Bob. Just looking at this packet there and reading the assessment, it was approved to approve. The recommendation was to approve with conditions. There are more conditions on this proposal than normal for us, and they get into landscaping and curb cuts and a variety of things. I just simply want to ask, have you read them?
We have, and we believe, we disagree with 2. The one that we could not be 24/7. We think we should be. We need to be. We can't justify this otherwise. We'll have break-ins every week. And the one that we can't have a second sign, where we believe that the code allows it, but we will certainly agree with the code. We think that that is an incorrect condition. So those 2 we would not want to be held to. Any others? That's it.
So they are, I don't see the 24-hour one in here.
Well, I forget how it's worded. Or maybe there isn't one. Could I have, I'm going to ask Jim to speak to that.
Good evening, James Channing, Council for Pride. With respect to the 24 hours, it was not an actual condition. It was just a note by Director Dromey that it should be part or should be something that was addressed. We do take exception to proposed recommendation condition number 13, which indicates that there shall be only one ground sign at this location. Pursuant to the bylaws, we do have one by right, but we do also can reserve the right by special permit only to potentially have a second ground sign. We just don't feel that that recommended condition would be appropriate. We ask that it be exempt. Obviously, if we are to choose to have the second ground sign, we would have to come back before you and request it through special permit, but I think it would be convoluted to have it and condition of this special permit, and then if we were to request a special permit for the ground sign, then come have to reopen this special permit for that. So we're just asking to reserve the right in the future to potentially have a second ground sign, and that'd be the only exception we take is proposed condition number 13. Everything else we agree with.
Well, I would keep my recommendation in, they get one ground sign. I don't believe there's a reason for two ground signs at this location, but that's obviously up to you guys.
So a ground sign, just describe a ground sign.
Well, it's the standard, it's the, the tall, usually it's a 30-foot tall sign that advertises Pride along with its gas prices. But I would think in most of the locations, with probably the exception of the North End, I think most of the Pride stations have one, as is depicted there on the corner. I don't believe there's a need for a second ground sign at this location. That's my opinion. And obviously, it's up to the board whether you agree, but I don't believe there's a need for two ground signs here.
Heck, no.
And is that ground sign at a point that is depicted there?
That would be on the corner of State Street and Thompson Street. I just, and again, this is just me, I'm not sure the need for a second ground sign at this location. Yeah, I mean, so that's my opinion. I would also argue that I think you're allowed one ground sign on State Street and one ground sign on Thompson Street. I do not believe you'd be allowed two ground signs on State Street because you don't have the length. I think you can have two ground signs if you exceed a certain length of, I think it's 300 feet. So I don't believe two ground signs on State Street would be allowed without a variance through the Board of Appeals, not a special permit. But it would be my recommendation that that condition remain, but obviously that's up to the council's discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ash.
Assuming you would be approved for a 24-hour operation, your cameras, something that with this committee, this council's been looking at is having a direct feed of your cameras to the police department. Is that something that you would put in place?
No problem. We do that in one other community already. Our IT people can hook up with this police department in probably a half an hour. We already got the technology. We just need their IT address. We're in. Terrific. And they're welcome to see it at all times.
Okay.
And that would apply to all our chain.
Great. Thank you.
Councilor Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would have liked the benefit of Councilor Twiggs's testimony here tonight. We do have the letter of support signed by Walter Kroll, and we have a few members of the McKnight board who seem to disagree. So I'm not sure who to direct my question to exactly, but my question is whether or not this approval of the McKnight board took into consideration the 24-hour operation time.
I'd be happy to address that. First, I'm not sure that there are any members of the board here tonight.
Is there any member of the board here tonight?
I was a former board member, but we're not active board members. But
Okay.
not just members of the committee. None of us are active.
Okay. Bob, if you could just maybe enlighten us, this is dated August of 17, so we're going back a ways here. Was that discussed
Yes,
and
it
approved
was.
by the neighborhood?
Absolutely. It was, and it was approved 24/7. It was
Okay.
absolutely discussed.
All right. Next question. We've done a lot of talk about chickens and what we're serving and what we're not serving, but this is a land use body, and we're supposed to be sitting here to talk about traffic flow, lighting patterns, and a lot of other things. What is the drive-through going to be used for? What is your proposed business purpose?
It is for our cafe bakery.
Not a Dunkin' Donuts or a Subway?
Absolutely not. Pride has not signed any Dunkin' Donuts agreements in many, many years and will not. We've expanded. We have, in fact, in terms of hiring, all from the neighborhood, in fact, from Mr. Gomez's neighborhood. We just completed a $100,000 bakery in Springfield on Cottage Street, and it is staffed 100% by Springfield residents, probably 90% of which are Latino.
Okay. So,
and they make the donuts, okay? And they make muffins, and they make all our baked products fresh every day.
Yeah.
And they're delivered fresh every day. And Pride's goal is for that someday you will think of Pride not as a gas station that sells food, but as a food store that sells gas. And along with that, we sell more healthy foods than anybody else. In fact, than any other chains combined.
That's
and
wonderful.
We all are entitled to a sweet every now and then.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm happy to hear that. We can't take into consideration the food that people are serving in a special permit application. We just can't under 40A. It's not a permissible inquiry as a special permit granting authority. But with that said, we got to be concerned about the traffic flow and the hours of operation and things of that nature. So out of this window, you're going to sell food, whatever it is. Are you also going to sell cigarettes or scratch tickets, things of that nature?
No.
Okay, so just food out of the drive-thru.
It's cafe bakery type things.
Is there a possibility that you would apply for a liquor license for this establishment?
No.
Okay, I'm done.
Councilor Williams.
Could I also add, it's not just bakery items. We sell fresh breakfast sandwiches with real eggs, okay? We do. The chicken is back.
Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bob, and I don't think we're not casting any aspersions on Bob Bolduc. This is still State Street. You have a Fortune 500 company at the top of that hill. And I think what folks want is the highest and best use for that property. Now, maybe the community isn't ready for it. I would have preferred something, no aspersion on you, Bob, something a little more in tune with, Stick and Mass Mutual and some other entities there. But based upon the testimony, he's going to try to make this not just Pride, because this is the integrity of State Street, right in the heart of Mason Square. And throwing a gas station up there could change that whole look on State Street, and I'm not about to let that happen. But based upon Bob's word and working with the neighborhood, and then on Mr. Frentelakis' testimony, we're going to try to get that food, continue to get that health store in Mason Square. I'm going to vote for this because I'm going to trust Bob's judgment to do the right thing and work with the residents. And you got to make sure they're specific, as Councilor Fenton alluded to, that they're concerned about the traffic, and they were concerned about the driveway on Westminster Street, another driveway towards State Street, and also this park is going to be in conjunction with Columbia Gas, I guess, to purchase the property to make it a park that Pat Sullivan's going to do. I hope that works, but because right down the street you have Magazine, which is probably 4 blocks down the road, that needs some attention and needs some work. And I'd be concerned about a playground right there on that corner where it's going to be really busy on the interstate. You got Bay Street on the backside, and you got State Street on this side. So I'm going to support this based upon probably as someone said, probably the best possible use we can get now, and based upon you to make that a Class 1A1 look on State Street, because that is the gateway into basically Mason Square. We've got the Gordon Pelsifer's done the fire station. He's done the motorcycle building. He's spent millions of dollars in that. We're talking about doing the Firestone building up there, getting the Firestone building back on track to really bring Mason Square back. That State Street corridor, which Congressman Neal got millions of dollars to beautify with the lights and the traffic, and starting from the courthouse, federal courthouse, all the way up the street. So the neighborhood is, I did get some calls on it. Some folks were concerned, but based upon you and your reputation, I think you'll give us a A++ store there on the corner of State Street. So thanks, Bob.
Before I close the public hearing, are there any final questions for the petitioner? Say again, before I close the public hearing, are there any final questions? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Any final comments, motions, or amendments? Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. For my question earlier, do we have to make a condition for the 24 hours of operation?
Mr. Clerk.
The petition currently has no conditions relative to the hours of operation.
So I'd like to make a condition that this facility be able to operate 24 hours.
It can now because there's no conditions on the hours of operation.
Okay. Thank you. Is the motion withdrawn? Motion withdrawn. All right, is a motion to move the question made by Councilor Edwards. Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the special permit, Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs, absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Special permit is approved. Councilor Edwards on the reasons.
The specific site is an appropriate location for such a use, structure, or condition. The use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use to incorporate the planning staff analysis into the decision as the basis of finding.
All in favor of the reasons say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we take item number 5, which is the zoning related to this specific issue.
All right, if there's no objection, item number 5, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 5 is an application for a zone change at the property known as East Side Thompson Street. This zone changes from Residence B to Business A.
I will now open the public hearing. Councilor Edwards.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we close this portion of the close the hearing and move the question.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Edwards, seconded by Councilor Gomez. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the zone change, Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes, Councilor Allen. Yes, Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh. Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ash. Yes, Councilor Twiggs, absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Bud Williams. Absent. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Zone change is approved. Thank you. Back to our regular agenda, item number 3, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 3 is an application for a special permit to operate a drive-through service window at the property known as 1110 Wilbraham Road.
Good evening. Pretty much the same thing applies. This property is at the corner of Breckwood Boulevard and Wilbraham Road. It's an existing gas station now that we propose to totally raise and remodel, eliminate the car wash, and put up basically the same facility as the one we just discussed in detail. Everything would be the same. It's already 24/7. It's already a gas station, and the only change is to add a drive-through window. We've met with the 16 Acres Council 3 different times. I don't have a letter from them because they didn't do a letter, but I can tell you that they were all very affirmative.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? Please step forward. Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Please step forward. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Please step forward. Seeing none, are there any final questions from the council? Before I close the public hearing, are there any final questions from the council? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the special permit, Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Twiggs, absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Bud Williams. Absent. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Special permit is approved. On the reasons.
The specific site is appropriate location for such a use, structure, or condition. The use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use to incorporate the planning staff analysis into decision as the basis of finding.
All in favor of the reasons say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 4 is an application to amend an existing special permit at a property known as 720 Berkshire Road. This is to change the petitioner.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. Danny Hanoush. I own the property with two of my brothers. I have with me Mohammed Burhan, who's the petitioner that we'd like to just change the from the previous time we were here for the used car sales. I don't know if you want me to go through the whole thing again, or if you're
Whatever you
comfortable
would like
with it,
to
or-
share with the council is fine.
Okay. He currently operates a car dealership in Agawam right now, and he would be opening this one on his own. So I just had a quick procedural question. I wasn't sure why the special permit is, I don't know if it's typical or if it was just for this scenario, why it was restricted to just the last petitioner. In this case, they were proposing the same. I know we have an order of conditions that I think anyone would have to adhere to, so.
Well, just for information, most special permits for probably the last 20-something years now are issued to the petitioner only. And the reason for that is to provide the council with an opportunity when a business changes hands to review the petitioner and the operation to make sure that, first of all conditions have been followed, and this is kind of an odd one because it was just approved in July, but there have been a few that condition has been taken out, but it's never been my recommendation to do so. Again, to me, especially on a property that has had a history of some issues in the past, I would prefer to keep it to the petitioner only. If and when that changes, again, it is a little time consuming, but they just need to come in. We have an opportunity to review it. In this case, I went out and looked at the property. Overall, the property was being maintained. Actually, the condition to require the fence being painted and repaired was completed. The only issue I had is there was a number of temporary signs on the fence, probably 5 or 6. Those need to be removed because I doubt they were permitted, but...
He just got a permit for them, so.
Okay. Well,
three of them.
Okay, I was going to say.
So the others were removed.
So, okay, that was the only condition I had, so...
It wasn't a huge deal. I was just curious because it was, I didn't see the order of conditions prior to it being approved, so it was after.
Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hanoush, just in terms of those 3 signs that are currently in violation of the special permit, what is your plan and timeline to remove those?
So the 3 signs that were up there, as soon as I got the notice, they were taken down, and then the tenant, this was for a totally separate tenant in the building, applied for a permit. I don't know if it was through Mr. Dromi or wherever you get the permit, but he did tell me that he was going to shoot a permit for 3 signs, so those are on there still.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those have been removed since? The 3 in question?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share with the council?
I just want to be clear, the 3 of them were permitted, so he, I guess, was allowed to keep those up. The others were removed. Yep. That's all.
So anyone else who would like to speak in favor, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition, please step forward. Say again, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition, please step forward. Seeing none, are there any final questions from the council? Before I close the public hearing, are there any final questions from the council? Seeing none, is there any final comments, motions, or amendments? Roll call.
On approving the special permit, Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Twiggs, absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Special permit is approved. On the reasons.
You got to get up.
The specific site is an appropriate location for such a use, structure, or condition. The use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use to incorporate the planning staff analysis and the decision as the basis of finding.
All in favor of the reasons say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there any further business before the council?
Thank you.
No further business.
All right, seeing none, meeting adjourned.